Yeah.
Okay, on the show today, Ranko Ceric, probably butchering that despite having known him for years. Joining us from the Balkans, from Croatia, martial arts teacher, dog trainer, embodiment teacher, general legend of a man, Ranko. Dobar fucking dan. Welcome.
Hi. Hey, dobar dan. Yeah, nice to be here.
Okay, so we've known each other for a few years. You followed me on Facebook for ages and eventually came to a workshop in Slovenia. We met in person like 10 years later or something.
Even if you can remember when you were in Ethiopia, when was that? What was that year?
That was a long time ago.
That's the first time I read your name. It was in like a newsletter of this organization that sent you there. And
wow.
I was really interested in the story. And then a little bit later, you came up, and so it's really years.
That's like years and 20 years. That's incredible. Yeah. Well, it's about time we had you on the podcast. Let's hear about your life, sir. So you teach Aikido, Sytema. You train dogs, but really you train owners, right? That's
That's like it would be like dog owner trainer, not dog trainer, which is strange because nobody knows what the fuck it is. So yeah. And I'm the first one to say fuck on your podcast, which is
you are definitely not.
It's a win.
Fuck on a podcast, definitely
in
not.
our session, I did. Yeah. Okay. So
let's hear a bit about your life. So how did you get into what you do now?
While I was in Fine Arts Academy, one colleague of mine went into Aikido training, and then he came back all obsessed and just basically dragged me there. And I was no kind of martial art guy. Any time when I was a kid, I was looking with any other guys that were training. So I started training. I was totally incapable. They called me RoboCop. This is how I moved. I moved like, no hip movement, no nothing. So probably because it was going so bad, I had to really push it. And this kept me going and going. And I saw a lot of people that were really talented just come and go. But I persisted. And then at one point, I realized I was actually helping with teaching. And at one point, I had my own dojo. And this is a weird thing for me, as I never thought I would end up doing something like that in my life.
Cool. So I likewise had that experience. I've heard this from a lot of different guests that talented people often don't continue, or if they do continue, they don't make good teachers because they didn't have to learn the hard way. They just got it,
They cannot explain actually how to get there because it just happened for them. And I had to put really a lot of patience and hard work. And by the time I realized I can do it, then I had this means of explaining to other people.
Yeah, I had a similar experience with a few things, yoga, martial arts. And so Aikido, why do you love Aikido? Because you still do Aikido? You tell us.
Still leading a dojo. It's a small dojo, and with time I managed to disconnect from all this politics and organization. So basically just my dojo, teaching kids, especially kids that are like having some social problems or being bullied and stuff like that. So this is where I see the most, let's say, benefit of Aikido. And not in a way that they apply it as a technique, but actually gradually building their character in a way that they start to deal with the problem in different ways. So.
And this is the traditional idea of Budo, isn't it, really? That it's character building first and actually technique second in many ways. And that's what I was kind of laugh when there's these big debates about Aikido doesn't work. And I kind of go, well, even if that were true technically, and, we could argue that, to say it doesn't work, you'd actually have to have a longitudinal psychological study. It's not a matter of fighting someone to say it doesn't work for what it's built for. You'd need a study that says it reduces confidence in children over a 1-year period, something like that.
Yeah.
And that just doesn't match up. Most parents take their kids to martial arts because they see the increases in confidence. They see the character change.
A lot of times they don't even realize where it comes from. So basically, I fix the child in a period of, let's say, half an hour, half a year or a year, and then parents gradually stop bringing him there, and not few actually realize like, oh, this is the thing that changes the child, because it's so gradual, let's say it goes unnoticed, so they cannot connect it. But as I said, the functionality, there are so much better ways to teach somebody and faster ways to teach someone to inflict injury onto other person than Aikido. And the learning curve is really, really like it takes years before it's applicable. And I think in a way it's sort of like something that prevents the misuse of the art.
Oh, nice. Okay. So,
yeah, I can teach somebody to break the wrist with the Nikio very fast, but if I'm very focused on you have to do it precisely like that, and then it takes years, and in those years they change the character in a way that they will never apply it in a violent way. So it's sort of like a safeguard.
Yeah. Yeah, nice way of thinking about it. The other thing that occurs to me, and I did my dissertation on this 25 years ago, is that there's multiple routes through which it does character development, and it's impossible to separate them out. There's no control groups here, so there's just exercise. Exercise. If you just went to the gym, you develop. I see young people just actually doing a lot in the gym, and then you've got the cultural element, you've got the discipline element. You've got the nature of the techniques itself, or in Aikido, you have this kind of role-taking element, which maybe isn't there in, say, karate generally. So you've got, I think you could probably identify 8 or 10 factors that are sort of simultaneously, everything from as simple as exercise is good for you through to sort of quite subtle esoteric things. They're kind of all going on simultaneously, so it's hard to know what does the character development, as it were.
One of the things that while I was learning Aikido that hit me like a train when I realized it is that as the techniques, as you said, like role taking, there is always like a role of attacker, let's say, and who is feeding the attack, and the role of the person who does the technique. And you repeat it and change the roles and repeat and repeat. And after after a few years of being attacker and each time being defeated in the technique, it sort of let's say, does a subtle reprogramming of the brain where you realize, okay, so every time I attack, be it physically or verbally, I have to do it in a way that opens myself. And if the person on the other side knows what to do, well, I'm screwed. So basically, it sort of ingrains into you this idea that by being aggressive, you will open yourself to possible defeat. So it usually takes you away.
Yeah, that's a lovely thought. It's profound. And there is also this almost psychodynamic element to it, which certainly the ancient Japanese weren't thinking about, or the modern Japanese, actually, Aikido is modern in that sense. But, in terms of being vulnerable or being in a position of power and not exercising abuse. Oh, yeah. Because you are at the end of every technique, you're in a position where you could really hurt someone. And some teachers do take advantage of that, unfortunately, right? They slam on the elbow locks and things.
Yes, there is a lot of that. And also, now that you found it, there is in some dojos, there is building a culture of where a teacher shows the brutal technique and everybody is happy because he brutalized somebody, and then it goes from the teacher to the student. So most of the time when somebody asks me about what martial art they should enroll the kid into, or they want to go, I said, it doesn't really matter about the art. The teacher is the one that does this kind of energy thing that is either protecting people and leading them in the right direction, or basically abusing. So like Cobra Kai thing and stuff.
Well, they swap it around, I think, in the latest version. But yeah, as you say, it's not the karate, it's the teacher and the culture built from that. And it's interesting, like Aikido I found can make people very arrogant because they get to experience winning a lot, like 50% of the time. Whereas if you do jiu-jitsu, you'll probably just get, particularly with the first few years, you're getting choked out by everyone. It's very humbling. And there's a reality check in that, right? Like judo or jiu-jitsu, you can think you're great, but you can just keep losing. Like you don't get to play the winner as a turn-taking exercise, which on the one hand, it can build confidence in Aikido, but on the other hand, it can build arrogance and this kind of kind of lack of grounding in reality, something like that?
Yeah, there's certainly an element of that, and it's something that is a lot of critique about Aikido goes in that way. But in the other, when you look at it, it's like hundreds and hundreds of years that traditional Japanese arts have been taught in that way, and they went to battlefield after that. So basically, it's a good way to prepare if you know what you are preparing for, and if you are not living in this bubble. And a nice example is my good friend from Bulgaria, who, fun fact about him, he was for years a double for Steven Seagal. He's huge and does Aikido, so that made him a good person. Anyway, so when he made his black belt in Aikido, he made a point to go to all other arts in Sofia wearing the black belt and basically defending his position as a black belt owner. Even if he wasn't a black belt in karate, he would go there and go through the training and see, does it work? Am I good in that? So there's this, if you really want to see, then yeah, some cross training is good, but not at the beginning. There should be a part of like,
yeah. And it's what occurs to me is the training methodology, whether it be judo, which has other limitations, whether it be aikido, whether it be solo kata forms, say, whether it be competitive forms. The training methodology ends up dictating a lot of what happens, both practically in the art, like how the art, and also psychologically. Like a lot follows from that, for better and for worse, in every case. I don't think it's not a perfect solution, because as soon as you have competitions, then you have, certain things that are illegal, and then you have, this sort of urge to kind of game the system for the rules to get the trophy. The average.
Yeah, you have your special technique that works most of the times and on the right side, not on the left. So it's not so much developing that direction. So like a good balance is in the club where I grew up, we had with normal trainings, we had like instructor trainings where we went really testing each other. And also when I would go to Bulgaria for the winter camp, it's always like really, really brutal testing. And then you bring it to the limit. But one of the most beautiful lessons in martial arts was on one summer camp in Bulgaria, a Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy I think then he was a purple belt or something. So he knew I was a newbie in BJJ, and basically we had a sparring, but through the sparring, he was sort of leading me through the technique and making me do the technique. And basically it should be that way in Aikido too. So when I'm like a higher, let's say, a person with more experience, if other person, my partner is doing technique on me, my task is not to oppose him, but at the beginning actually to lead him through the technique with my body. There's sort of teaching through being the partner. So.
I've seen very skillful sparring from BJJ people sometimes. Another example was a senior guy who would when he was training with me, would only try and use the most ridiculous, difficult techniques he hadn't yet mastered. Because he could just choke me out immediately if he just did the random standard techniques. He was essentially reducing himself to white belt level by trying to do, omoplatas and things that were just kind of tricky. And I thought that was very great, because he was actually keeping himself in the learning zone and not trying to boost his own. He was using me as an opportunity, because if he tried that with his brown belt friend, they just tear his arm off. So I thought that was
there is a lot of humility in this kind of, especially I saw in like a sports-oriented martial arts, but in the higher level. Yeah. When they are in the lower, they will be all out because there is no control. They just want to dominate. But with years, you can see that, reprogramming comes, and the ones that stay to the black belt will usually have this kind of personality that you just said. So the one that is humble to the others. So again, the way of this kind of martial arts going through, let's say the word, through embodiment, using this kind of apparatus to change the emotions, change the mind, change the, let's say, our programs behavior.
Interesting to think of sort of reprogramming through it.
Yeah.
It's kind of a perspective to look at any art, but most people out listening, I think, would find that quite surprising. To think of reprogramming as a way of
installing a new program of new operational program actually, and through a long period of time. And this was for me the interesting thing about Sytema was there is no gratification in Sytema. Like in sports,
so just pause a moment. So Systema's a Russian martial art, because listeners might not be familiar with it. You did aikido for a while, and then
for many years, and then I added Sytema. It's a sort of similar principles, but more this kind of Slavic, free and easygoing way. So
it's less Japanese,
not so
isn't
form.
it? Less form.
Yeah, less Japanese, totally.
A similar principle of listening and flowing.
Yeah. And for me, it was upgrade. It changed my approach to Aikido drastically, because I became so much more free from the strict technique. I can still teach the strict technique, but I'm not, let's say, put in box by it. So to get back to that, where was I with Sytema? Can you retrieve?
Yeah, we're talking about humility of other grades, and then talking about how it becomes almost like a reprogramming tool.
Okay. You will come back.
No worries. What were you kind of lacking in Aikido then? So for me, when I did some Sytema after doing Aikido, it's like creativity kind of came in a big way, and that also this different set of health practices, which are quite rich, I think, in Sytema too.
Yeah, and bringing in this culture that is closer to me, so this kind of Slavic way of doing things,
right?
Because there is. The school I was most associated with in Sytema was playing a lot of, let's say, a lot of traditional, integrating dance into it, so Cossack dances, and then bringing them in as a way to, as their way to transmit the martial arts. They didn't have dojos. They didn't have like trainings in martial arts. They had dances, they had some kind of traditional fights, but this was kind of, let's say, and also games. So the traditional Slavic games where you transmit social skills and martial arts skills, just as a martial art. You don't think. And then this kind of learning through the game. The moment it stops being the game, we stop learning. Right? And this is something that I brought into Aikido a lot, especially as I work with kids. So keeping this kind of Eastern, let's say, structure, and then letting them have a little bit more of the freedom, more of game, more of play.
Let's talk about Slavic culture then, because I know this is something we've joked about a lot over the years. You and I, obviously I have a Ukrainian wife. I've worked there a lot. We did a lot of courses in Russia. I've worked in Croatia, other places, Serbia. And people sometimes think Eastern Europe's the same as Western Europe. I mean, you've got kind of Northern/Western Europe / North America. Is a block. Yeah. We can call that Western civilization, right? You've got Eastern civilization. Again, huge blocks, huge generalizations, but, Japanese culture, the martial arts are influenced Korea, China, Japan primarily. In most Western psychology is very much coming out of that Western culture, particularly sort of West Coast American culture. Like the trauma world is almost synonymous with the Californian trauma world. A little, Gabor Mate's up in Vancouver, which is an extension of California, really. You get the odd person in the other, New York or something, but pretty much it's West Coast. And then you've got this whole block of Europe going into Asia, which we could say Slavic or East European, though they're not synonymous. There are, Hungarian, Slavic, whatever. But it's that's not, even though we're talking hundreds of millions of people, that's not a cultural block that I think is well understood outside of those areas, unless, like me, you happen to have a personal connection. So we're looking at it through the lens of martial arts, right? Like, like what comes into martial arts that might not be there if it was Western European or Asian?
One thing that jumps to mind, and it's totally with my Sytema school, is music.
Right.
So the teacher that I was most connected with, and I'm still connected in Sytema, uses balalaika through all the training.
Right.
And it's such a great. I know there is like in capoeira they use music.
Well, that's like that's Afro-Caribbean, which would be another block that uses.
So and let me think. There should be some other. I've heard on some other cases, but while I'm leading the training and playing a balalaika, there's so many like things that I can use it for. For instance, controlling the intensity of the training. I can speed up. I can slow down. I can play it louder, play it softer. But also, what it does is the rhythm of the music is actually breaking the let's say stress response through to the situation. Okay, so it's much easier for the practitioners to go through more stressful training without coming into freeze zone. So basically, music is taking them through.
The music, that's nice to hear. I think one we often joke around is sort of humor. There's a sort of dark humor that often doesn't land at all in Asia or lands very badly in Western California. It's like that's one we tell jokes which, if overheard in a restaurant in England, let alone in San Francisco, would not be looked well upon.
And also there is kind of this easygoing thing, like there is a seminar and then you feel tired, you just sit by the side and wait till it passes, and then you join. There's all this formality, which is important, and I see it as important in Aikido. But at one moment when I see that it shouldn't be like that, and when I think of, let's say, embodiment trainings, it's more closer to what I would see in Sytema than what I would see in Aikido.
Yeah, easy going can be there. I mean, particularly in your part of the Slavic world, though, because it's kind of Italian influence as well, right? There's that. Croatian Slovenia has that slightly Italian chill vibe, but there isn't quite such a rigidity. I think in Slavic cultures compared to
as you go Easter, then it becomes like in Bulgaria. You will see really they got this. It takes the time to go through the like front barrier and then to get people.
I mean, there's still hierarchy, so that's maybe in common, but it's still a little bit more flat, a little bit more easygoing than some of the Asian arts, particularly the Japanese. The other one that occurred to me is there's something sort of very life and normal and not too pure. Like I remember at the beginning of one Sytema camp in the woods, everyone had a vodka shot. And I don't drink, so I didn't have one, but it struck me actually as profoundly healthy. And it, like breaking bread together, it just was sort of wholesome and kind of peasant-like. I mean that in a positive. Does that make sense? Like kind of earthy.
The school I'm connected with, this guy is working a lot with families. He started in English he called it Empower the Child, but basically in Russian it's fathers and sons, because it works on this dynamic of mother being the energy that brings the let's say security to the growing of the child, and father being like structure that the child can jump into the next step, next generation. And so basically a lot of games, a lot of social growing and let's say correcting the social problems in kids and in families through games and dances. But while I was in an instructor camp in 2016 in St. Petersburg, we had a whole weekend with this family thing. And so we went to some kind of horse farm, and there was like eating together, playing together. And then one thing that this guy is very strict about, and this what reminded me, there is no alcohol, absolutely. So he's trying to introduce this kind of togetherness, and so that children can see the parents doing meaningful things, funny things, without smoking and drinking. And so So sort of
which is unusual, right? Like
very I've been three weeks in Russia, and nobody except me, my friend from Hungary, and the Austrian guy had a beer, and everybody else was just totally straight. So very, very.
I mean, Russia is an alcoholic culture. I mean, men live 10 years less than women in Russia. I mean, even smoking, like all the EFC Moscow trainers who are now abroad, essentially they're refugees now, if people are talking about this. They're in other countries, but all of the female trainers, so Vilya, Tonya, Kate, they all smoke. And that was, we had a big conflict about it because I was like, you can't smoke, you're embodiment teachers, And they were like, people smoke here.
I think it's what you mentioned a lot is this kind of very huge transgenerational trauma in especially Soviet bloc, and so this is something that, and I think this guy, this instructor of Sytema, he sort of dealt with it by reconnecting with the tradition.
Yeah, it's hard to know what's East European, what's post-Soviet, and what's trauma.
Yeah,
it's a sort of mixture of all three you're looking at generally, right?
But I think there is a lot of this, there is a lot of trauma from the Second World War, but huge trauma from the Soviet times, and there is this huge block that is connected with it. But what is interesting is, as you said, you would sort of say that the Eastern tradition is drinking and smoking, but this guy was reconnecting with the deeper tradition of games and dances, and cleaned actually and now he's living in Slovakia and doing the camps through the Europe. So basically, this is a great thing to work on. I tried to implement it here, but I was hit with the problem that the moment fathers realize they have to be part of playing with it, so it's not like leaving the kids and I play with them. They have to play. I had the problem that no males would show up, only the mothers, and they were refusing to take on their role. And I know it's sort of tricky to talk about this, but they didn't want to take on the role of being the structure that the child can rely on. And so I would have to work on it, and then I just gave up. That's what.
I've seen those. I've seen some really good father-son martial arts classes, but other times people resist it because they think it's free babysitting kind of thing, drop the kid. It's much cheaper than a childminder to take your child to a karate class. So, I mean, so the sort of Slavic, East European influence, find that fascinating, very culturally rich, and, obviously it's one that I liked a lot personally, found very enriching. And there are distinctions. I've spent a lot of time in Poland, and it's not Russia. There are huge differences. Obviously, Ukraine would be fairly keen to point out some of those differences right now. And then, Slovenia is not Croatia even, we find, right? There's a difference there again.
Yeah, we are so close, but there is huge differences. And even if you say, okay, let's not generalize, but basically generalizations are because there is some difference in the folks, and they are more into the Europe in a way, mentally. Not in our former country, as you would go from east to west, a lot of things would change in the way people interact. So a lot of humor in Serbia, a little bit of balance in Croatia, in Slovenia a little bit colder, but on the different level. So there is definitely. And
there's also about trauma, right? Slovenians have had slightly less trauma than
they had
who have had maybe less trauma than Poles or Ukrainians. There's a sweetness to the Slovenians that's I think part of the sort of innocence of being tucked away in the mountains and not traumatized.
Yeah, even if this our last episode, they had 6 days of war, so it's not. They had
6 days. That's nothing, is it? Ranko, 6 days, nothing, barely. But all right, let's go to the other aspect of what you do then. So there's the martial arts, but you also train dogs. But as you say, it's not really dogs you train; it's the owners. And I'm thinking of getting a puppy, so I'm keen to get your advice. I've been texting you lately about getting a puppy. So tell us about this aspect.
It's something that actually is materialized as I had to solve a huge problem. I had dogs for all of my life as I was a kid, and let's say it's 4 years ago, 4.5. My wife found 2 dogs in our street, and we already had a Labrador who was getting older, and we decided to adopt one of those 2, and the other one we found another foster home. But she's adorable, but she came with like a bag full of, she was 7 months or something when we got her, but bag full of problems that started to show off in the months that followed. One of the biggest ones, she's really hyper anxious. And the moment she realized that the house was her place, so everybody who would come as a guest would be like total enemy, and she would turn from a sweet, gentle dog into Godzilla, like, rah, and the hairs and everything. And so this really put me into, I had to work with her. And the first thing that came to me is, okay, I have to build, she has to build self-confidence. And so I took a personal trainer and went, I think, 2 or 3 times a week for half a year, then once a week for another half a year. And he was like very good, very well trained, but some things couldn't be solved. And then in 2020, as I started specifically learning about embodiment, and after our meeting in Ljubljana, let's say, in a way, fortunately, this lockdown thing came, and then you put your education online. This was the fact. And then I came into contact with this kind of neuroscience of going into fight, flight, freeze, and how does it. And so I realized that the way I treat the problem is wrong, because what the behaviorist will tell you is, as somebody is entering the house, you have to tell your dog it's wrong to bark and pull him on the leash until he stops. And then you will reward the moment that he stopped barking. But basically what you are doing, you are rewarding the idea that the situation is dangerous. So somebody came into the space, she became anxious, she started barking, and now I'm shouting at her. And so this person that came in is really bad because it made her owner shout at her. So she has to really get this person out of the house now. Yeah. And it didn't get better. And then I realized that totally contrary to what we would think, because they would say, if you start to cuddle the dog while he is barking at someone, it's going to like positively reinforce the wrong behavior.
But
but actually what it's doing is soothing the nervous system. So I realized like if I would cuddle her here, she sort of cannot bark well, because it's like,
so it's a safety perspective rather than a reward punishment perspective. It's
so I'm building
the nervous system perspective.
And this came as a total like, okay, let's work on it. And I started changing what I learned from this teacher, reading a little bit, exploring, and applying what I learned in the embodiment teachings about the dog, because we are mammals, so the same nervous system. They bark.
So if my nervous system's correct, and you kind of see this, right? Like when you see a kid that's kind of wired a certain way, you're like, God, what are the parents like? You know, and I'm sure every teacher that's done a PTA meeting, a parent-teacher meeting, kind of knows this. You know, like the parents coming through the door that's formed that nervous system, right? So I guess the dog owners, it's the owner that's created this dog.
Yeah, and then with time, as I was like changing what I learned from a professional trainer and seeing the different results, it sort of made me realize that, especially for owners that adopt dogs, because when you buy a dog, it's a puppy and you start from zero, and basically if you do it right, everything's going to be okay. But when you adopt a dog, even with like 7 months, it already can have a lot of problems, like trauma, that dog cannot, like, there is this joke about a veterinarian that goes to the doctor, and doctor says, so tell me, what is it? What hurts? And the veterinarian looks at him and says, oh, we can work like that. That's nice. I mean, you cannot ask the dog what's the problem or what was the trauma, right?
Right, yeah.
So you basically, the only thing you can work on is working on nervous system, working on reprogramming and stuff. And with time, I realized, okay, so this is something that can really help owners in a way to teach them that, okay, normally you have to go through some kind of obedience training. That's nice. The dog will learn commands. But what will really work is how am I during the interaction with the dog? So when I go out for the first walk in the morning, the first like 100 meters through the village where there are dogs in the yards, and for our dogs, it's just like, wow, yeah, it's a carnival. They start to bark. And so the only thing I'm doing while I'm walking beside my dog is constantly centering myself and trying to influence, actually like trying to infect her with my centering. I cannot tell her to be calm. I can be calm, and then she will feel more secure and not need to bark.
And this is, for those who are listening who aren't interested in dogs, this is embodiment coaching. In the sense, you can't tell your client not to be stressed. You can talk about the past, unlike a dog. You can, talk, like therapy, talk for years about the past, but it doesn't actually do anything. It doesn't really get you anywhere, right? Like what we're doing is calming our nervous systems and those of our clients so they can think better. As a coach, it's kind of a similar process, really.
Yeah, exactly. And so basically, I've been using most of the last year trying to build this kind of awareness that there is the need for this. Because once you are the first guy who sells wedding dresses on the planet where they don't have weddings, they don't understand, you have to actually teach them why they need them. This is a little bit easier because there is a problem, and I think I do have the solution for part of it, because a lot of owners have sometimes like small problems, but sometimes big problems that can be solved by the way they actually behave themselves and maybe they just carry themselves.
In the last few minutes, maybe this is kind of interesting to people, whatever their background, that you've gone through quite a marketing journey, haven't you, over the last few years?
Oh, yeah.
You're about with this, and we've been talking about this as friends and as colleagues and, mentor, mentee, that if you tell someone, okay, I do human training, they're probably going to go, what the hell? I don't need training. It's my dog that's the problem. They just keep eating the couch.
Exactly.
Right?
So once I say that the workshop is not for dogs, like half of the people ask, like, what are we gonna do on the workshop without the dog? Yeah, okay. And the biggest problem I had was marketing the workshop that is dealing with sort of borders and personal space, because most owners will never admit that they have the right to have the personal space. They think that, I'm loving my dog, so it has to be able to go everywhere, jump on my head and everything. But in the end, the thing is that at one point you will need to just sit and relax, and the dog will try to, put you into game or whatever, and then you will get angry at the dog because you didn't define your personal space. And I had a problem of actually explaining why you need it. And people would argue on Facebook posts about, but I love my dog and she can go everywhere and in my bed. And I say, okay, but there are reasons why this is not so good.
Hashtag liberal parenting.
The same thing. I would so much love
as a dad, maybe
same thing. And it's not only that. The thing is that at one point, dog, if everything is permitted, and the same thing is for child, actually, they have the idea that they are the leader of the pack.
Yeah.
And then at one point, they will start to be the one who thinks they have to solve the problem. So the postman is the problem. I'm going to solve this. Things like that. So a lot of things can be changed by redefining the game. But then again, the problem is to explain to people, you really need this for this and this and this reasons. You need to set your boundaries. It's not, the same as kids.
And in terms of sort of marketing lessons then for people listening, it's like, I know we've talked about this. Is it all right to share some of the things we've talked about privately about? Yeah. So I didn't want to break that confidentiality. So things like, okay, what's the problem? So I'd say like, hey, how do you know a dog needs training? Like, what are the top 3 problems? And it's like, you told me things that I didn't really understand, but it was like, okay, the couch is eaten, or, they bark at strangers entering the house, and, identifying the problem. And then it's like, okay, well, what is actually the benefit of the owner? Is it like, okay, you actually have a better relationship with your dog, you feel happier, you spend less time shouting at them, it's less stressful? Because Bill Burr does a great piece of comedy on adopting a dog with issues. If you haven't seen it, you're going to love it, because it talks about adopting a little fucking psycho dog that has trauma issues. And, it talks about how he goes to his therapy dog trainer, and the dog trainer's like, no, you've got anger issues, Bill, not the dog, And so Bill Burr first he's a great comedian, but he's clearly an angry guy. And he became aware of his anger issues through taking his dog to a dog specialist. And the dog specialist saying, Bill, you're crazy, mate. That's why the dog's got issues, But other things we talked about in terms of marketing then. So it's things like we looked at like, okay, what's the benefits and what's a thing that they're going to understand? And then we also looked at like, what stops them getting dog training, right? Like dog training without the X. Or
and also how to frame the problem that they don't feel intimidated by solving it.
Right. Like we always use the example of, Erica's women who are too nice. That's a really nice framing, because you go, well, I'm just too nice. If it was called,
good about it,
no, if it was called women with bad boundaries who manipulate people through fake kindness, like that, it's the same thing. But no one wants to sign up for that. So it's like you have to have something that people can go, all right, that's me. I can get on the page with that,
Yeah, that's what I've been spending this workshop is this weekend. It's on Sunday, and for the past month, I've been looking at like Facebook marketing, seeing why doesn't this work? Changing a word, changing the image, and then one value at a time, like one variable at a time. I would change and then look for 2 days and see if it's improving. So very, very a lot of this, and through this, I get a lot of understanding actually of how people perceive their problems.
Right, like do you show a happy dog or do you show like an angry dog ripping up a couch? Like you could have a theory on that, but you could just run 2 ads, right?
Yeah, but also at the end I ended up with making a hand drawing, because I would put a photograph of a dog in the bed between the legs, just the head, and then one part of the people would react, oh, this is so cute. They sleep with us in the bed. And the other one would say, gross, this is terrible. And well, there was a lot of commenting that's good but none of them would actually apply for so I had to tweak and change. And
that's the key thing. What's the behavioral thing you want? That people buy sign up for the free event. It's not that people like the picture, right? Like this is where I had a thing about dating the other day saying, this is outrageous that women only date. Someone had been saying that women basically want about 20% of men and and they go for these characteristics, have to be 6 foot tall, have to be 6 foot, 6 figures, 6 pack. And someone was complaining, saying, this is awful. I've asked women what they want, and they say that they want sense of humor, and that's not included in this. And I'm like, okay, but did they fuck sense of humor? Like, do they set their Tinder profile to sense of humor, or do they set it to under a certain age or over a certain height? Bumble had a setting where people could change the height that they wanted for men, and you could just not show men. And the average that women set it for was 6'1", which is like.
Then again, a lot of that is just ideas, because once they are confronted with the person that got all of these things, they realize, okay, but he's not funny, and then where is the humor?
Right. So the key thing is not what you ask people. It's actually the behavior, right? So the same for marketing. You can say, hey, do you like my happy dog picture? And people can say, yes, I like it, but that doesn't mean they sign up for the taster class.
Yeah, of course. They can be like 2,000 likes and nobody signs in. So this is also the part of marketing that it's mystified by is who actually shows up, who actually is the customer of the people that interact. So
martial art of marketing. We've just had 200 people sign up for our coaching course this year, KEC, which and everyone's like, great, we've done the marketing. I'm like, oh no, I want to know who these people are. like how old are they? What kind of, like, we're like, okay, the German market's grown. Okay, let's use German translation next time to grow that even more. You know, it's like, okay, how old are they? Well, why is only 10% of men booking and 90% women? What's going on there? You know, like that information is just gold.
And even the numbers, if I look at the Facebook marketing statistics and I see, like, let's say I'm advertising to the range from 40 to 65 or from 20 to 65. And I see that from 20 to 40 is very very high numbers of responses, and towards 65 very low. But then on the workshop, there are older people. So I don't know that they respond, but those that apply are from this smaller. So getting them out of the, let's say, people that I advertise to would be a gross mistake. I would have a lot of response, but not many applications.
Well, that's always the key thing, is that ultimately who's buying. Right. And the closer you can get to that, the better as a data set.
Yeah.
It's like ultimately it's like, oh, okay. Like even if they're not asking questions, they are buying or whatever. This is the ongoing game dance. Right? It doesn't stop.
Something I didn't sign up when I said, okay, I just want to teach people something.
You know, let's finish on that then. Just can you go another 2 or 3 minutes? Few minutes?
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. Like, I'm reasonably good at marketing compared to most people in my field. And I have employees, unlike most people, so I can outsource certain things. You know, there's a few people that work for me, and I still do more marketing than I would like. And I've turned it into a spiritual practice. I've turned it into I've tried to make it fun. I do a lot of fun marketing that I enjoy. Like this podcast is marketing that's fun, right? Mm-hmm. But part of me goes, I didn't sign up for this, Ranko. Fuck it. I
just want to teach people.
Like, what is there a solution?
Bring them in.
Do we just have to suck it up? Do we just have to say, you know what, we live in the real, like I have to do the washing up every day, right? It's not a big deal. I just do it, you know?
And what I especially like is your definition. You just have to do it good enough.
Right.
It doesn't have to be like... And what I see is by bringing the things that I learned from your marketing courses into this field, which is most people are just not using it in, like dog trainers, where I'm not a dog trainer, but still I'm sort of. I feel as if I'm coming in with, like a special service training.
Superpower.
Yeah, they don't have any.
You don't have to be great. One-eyed man in the land of the blind, isn't it? Really? Yoga's got a bit more competitive now because a lot of yogis are catching on, coaching a bit more so. But these aren't really, like any of my friends in real industries would laugh at the quality of marketing that's good enough. It doesn't have to be. The other thing I've seen is that there is something for just doing a great job year in, year out. So talk to my friend Martin Elwood, who has a retreat center, and they just fill up every year. They fill up. You know, they do. He could probably make more money if he did, learn more about marketing, whatever. But it's like they just have a great retreat center, nice place, well-run courses from the heart. There is that's part of it as well.
It does depend. There is this dynamics of things that are popular. Maybe in 10 years it will be very hard to get people to this kind of event that you run. So it's like Aikido. When I started Aikido, we had a huge club and we didn't market at all. There was just kind of these photocopied posters on the billboards. That was enough. Now to get people to sign up, where I'm giving, like, I'm a much higher level than my teacher that time was. I'm giving away more. And I have
supply and demand, though, right? Like, if the market factors are beyond your control in that sense, right? Like, teaching kung fu in the 70s would have been
it's just the thing. So
MMA now, I live in a tiny town, really, really small town, smaller than Brighton now, and there's a jiu-jitsu club that's got a mat full of people, just because that's pretty fashionable. And it's I do wonder if traditional martial arts are. Maybe dying is overstating it, but I think they're going to get a very minority pursuit again.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be like Morris dancing or, kind of something sort of esoteric and unusual.
And I see it's actually, it's a shame because as I work with kids, there is so much they can get from this that they cannot find anywhere else, unfortunately.
And this is where I feel like traditional martial arts need to lean into their niche. They need to say, look, you can become a badass quicker doing MMA, but your kids will get a better education here.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's niching. Niching for our American audience.
Niching.
Good. Let's end there. Ranko, I knew it would be a pleasure. It always is with you, sir. So, where do people find you on the internet? Where do they go for Aikido, Sytema, or human training?
For Aikido, I've got this aiki-n.hr. I can, you can put it in the description down there. And for dog owners, it's called, now in English doesn't say anything, it's Ceric, which means dog language. So I will not try to spell in English.
So it's in Croatian, essentially, right? So unless people speak Croatian.
So, yeah.
But you do work virtually with people in English as well?
Actually, what I started, when I started doing one-on-one clients, first client was from Switzerland and the second one from Canada, and it was all online. So basically, it's something where I want to move on. But at this point, while I'm sort of building what I'm doing, I have to do it locally. And
Ranko, open up that Canadian and Swiss dollar. Come on.
Yeah, bring it on.
It's Ranko if people want to find him on the socials as well to reach out. Ceric. So Ranko, you can find him on those.
Yeah, I can definitely work on any kind of dog connected problem online and see if it can be solved. So
all dog connected problem. I have so many jokes about. No, I'm not going to go there. You know where I'm going. Okay, so we're all good. Let's leave it there. Ranko, hvala, spasiba, domo arigato, all of the above.
Hvala, thanks.
Well, sure, if you like that, you'll probably like embodimentunlimited.com and our app. So on both of these things, you can get a bunch of podcasts that aren't available here, some exclusive ones with some big names, some people you'll probably recognize that are over there. There's a copy of my book, PDF of my first book on embodiment, which seems to people like. I sold quite a few copies on Amazon, but there's a free copy there. What else is there? Loads of videos of me coaching embodiment, resources on trauma, on meditation, on yoga. And you can also chat to people without going on Facebook or any of that nonsense. So if you want to chat embodiment people, that's there. And it's on the embodimentunlimited.com, all free, and the app available at the App Store and all that good stuff. So if you like this, do check those out.